I think people can definitely turn their pain into purpose. You have to write down all of your emotions on a piece of paper. And when you write down those emotions, do not hold back. Building a relationship with a higher being is a must, because if you don't have that connection, it's almost impossible to navigate through life. I remember when I did my book signing a couple of years ago, a young lady came to my table. She was 18. She's like, I read the first few pages. That's me. You're talking to me.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to In the Making, where we delve into the most powerful stories of resilience, healing, and purpose. Today's episode is one that strikes at the core of human emotions: grief and finding solace in the art of expression. Our guest, Tahanee Sayyid, is an author whose journey with grief became the very thing that led her to the pen. After the unexpected passing of her cousin, Tahanee challenged her pain into writing, discovering the magic of self expression through the written word. Get ready to be inspired by her story of transformation, healing, and the power of words to transcend our deepest emotions. Let's dive deep into Tahanee's extraordinary journey. Tahanee, welcome to In the Making.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Same here. You have such a beautiful journey, and grief can break us or reshape us. How did the loss of your cousin led you to the writing, and how did writing help you navigate such a painful time?
Well, I always had a thing for writing. My dad, whom I lost last year, he
So
actually
sorry.
taught me how to thank you. He taught me how to read and write at the age of 4. And he's always given me all of his old novels to read. And I've always had this thing for just literature. So when I lost my cousin, it was a very devastating and sudden loss. She actually passed away in her sleep. She was 19, and I was just with her before she passed away. Losing her was an experience I've never obviously felt before. I was 16 when this occurred, actually 15, turning 16. I was at her funeral, literally on her birthday. I spent my birthday at my favorite cousin's funeral, and her brother and I share the same birthday. So you can't imagine what it was like for him to be at his sister's funeral. I went through a very dark time in my life. I was depressed. I had to get on antidepressants at the age of 16. And I remember one day sitting and talking to my mom, and I'm like, Mommy, I'm hurting so bad. Like, what can I do to get this out? She said, You know what? You have to write down all of your emotions on a piece of paper. And when you write down those emotions, do not hold back. I wrote my very first poem, and that poem was dedicated to her. By writing how I felt, it led me on this journey of literature. And from there, I realized that the pen can really be your pal. And
Yeah.
my pen became my everything. So my poetry became just me. If someone read my poetry, they could actually feel my emotions in those words. I want to give thanks, and credit to my cousin, to my father, my mother, and God, as always.
Oh, that's incredible. And I'm so sorry for your loss. I
Thank you.
can't imagine losing a loved one and seeing all of that at such a young age. It's often said that creativity is born out of our deepest struggles, but your journey with grief is a testament to that.
Thank you.
Many people struggle with putting their emotions into words, especially in time of loss. What advice do you have for someone who wants to start writing but doesn't know how to begin?
I think people can definitely turn their pain into purpose. And the most important thing about writing is you write from what's inside of you. No one can tell you how to express yourself. No one can tell you how to put your emotions into words and make them come to life. There really is no right or wrong answer when it comes to writing. It's all about who you connect with. They say energy attracts energy. So if you are in communication with someone who recently lost a loved one or a very close friend, and you write a poem and it actually touches and resonates with them, you know that you've done something to help someone feel better. It's about getting out those emotions and being able to come to grips with the pain that you're feeling.
I agree. Writing has this magical ability to capture what we can't even speak. Just like you said, putting your emotions into action through writing is so beautiful. In today's world of AI, writing is easier for people. It is way less complicated, but I would still advise you all to write, because that pen, your hands, your power, and your wisdom has the magic to create something that you would never know. Tahani, you mentioned anxiety attacks and seeking professional counseling after the loss. How important is it for people to seek help while simultaneously using writing as a therapeutic outlet?
It's extremely important to have a support system around you. One of the most important things is acknowledging the fact that you are depressed, acknowledging your emotions, because you don't know how to make sense of things, what it is that you're feeling. Sometimes there were days where I just didn't know I was coming or going. And the impact of it for a 15-year-old to experience is devastating. I felt a sense of guilt because I don't know if I mentioned it earlier. My cousin wanted me to stay with her a week before she passed away. And she lived in Queens, New York. That's where I'm originally from. Every time I went to visit her, I would spend the night with her, which meant that if I were to be with her at that time, I would have awakened to her deceased body. So God had a way of saving me. I had to get over guilt because before she passed away, she said, every time I go to sleep, I stop breathing in my sleep. She's like, I'm afraid to go to sleep sometimes. And that guilt for me was there. I could have awakened her, but that wasn't part of the plan. So I think that is very important to come to a realization that whatever's going to be, we can't control what God or whoever you identify as your creator has planned for us. It's all about just making sense of it. And like I said earlier, taking that pain and turning it into purpose, you know? It's just a journey that people have to go on, and a very, very strong support system and have a relationship with a higher entity.
I love that. It's so well said.
Thank
It's
you.
okay to get help because sometimes writing is the bridge to healing that we don't even know exists.
Hmm.
Um, and I wanted to know if you would like to share what happened with your cousin. Did you ever knew?
Yes, I can recite my very first poem, which
Oh,
is
beautiful.
dedicated to her, and it tells you the whole story. What happened? The summary: she went to sleep on a Monday night, and she didn't wake up that Tuesday morning. She was 19 years old, full of life, just a beautiful young lady. But she carried herself as a woman. You know, she was like my second mother. Her name was Shani. She's my first cousin, my mother's sister's daughter. Um, so I'll recite the poem. It's called Shani in dedication to her. This was my very first poem. So the emotion, when I finished that poem, I was amazed. The poem was so impactful that it actually got picked up by a National Poets Foundation. They wanted the poem, but they didn't want to pay me, give me my props to the poem. I'm like, no, this poem is more than,
Right.
So it's called Shani, and it goes like this: loving and caring as a mother is to her child. A girl who loved life. She was crazy and wild, so sweet and brave, too young for a grave. Her heart stopped beating as she slept and lay on one Tuesday morning, sunny and bright, not knowing she wouldn't see that Tuesday night. I wonder if she knew how much she was loved and how much she was missed when the man from above came down and took her life from her body and whispered in her ear, come with me, Shani. I miss her so much, her hugs and her kisses, and the way she would laugh at my jokes and my disses. I remember the last time I said goodbye, not knowing that 7 days later she would die. I miss her so much. I really do. And I wish I would have said more often the words, I love you.
I'm so emotional.
Thank you so much.
It's
It always
really
takes so much
genuine.
out of me.
I love that poem. It is so well written and you conveyed the message. She just passed away in her sleep.
No, come to find out, they said she had an enlarged heart, but it was something that we didn't know. And she just had a breast reduction a few months before that. But the doctors checked around her heart, nothing, no red flags. The only thing she mentioned to me a week before was that she couldn't breathe in her sleep. And I remember laying there the very last night before I left, and I told her, I said, I'm afraid to go to sleep. And she's like, why? I said, because I feel like I'm going to die in my sleep. But it was her the following week. And before we left, she was supposed to come to Virginia. And I remember hugging her, standing on the porch hugging her. We were fake crying. And she was like, I'm going to miss you so much. I'm going to miss you too. And then we're hugging, like, "Ah." And then I'm like, get off of me, girl. I'm going to see you next week. I did, but it just wasn't. the way I want it. So,
Well, it's so thankful that you decided to share the poem with the
thank you.
audience, and I'm sure it's going to leave a deep impact,
Thank
especially
you.
your emotions were conveyed so well, considering it was your first one. You know, writing can be personal, but you've turned your passion into a brand and a business. How did you make that transition from writing for yourself to writing for an audience?
You know, it's kind of funny because I would write little small columns just for myself, little articles that I would share with friends and family. I realized the effect it would have. Just so excited to hear what I wanted to say. Then I started really focusing in on relationships and love. And by the grace of God, I was presented with so many wonderful opportunities to speak on the interaction between human beings and self love, prosperity, and being grateful. And it was a very natural transition. It's not like I sat up there and said, oh, I want to specialize in this. It was what I said early on in the interview, writing down your emotions. And sometimes it hits certain people, sometimes it doesn't. But for me, I know that whatever I write always have an effect on someone in a positive way. When I realized the power of words and how it can really touch someone's soul, their spirit, and change the way that they may feel at that particular moment, I knew I had really found my passion. I knew I found what God put me here.
Shani gave you something so beautiful that has stayed with you forever. In your interview with Authority magazine, you talk about growing a business through writing. What is the most critical piece of advice for anybody who wants to do the same?
I think it's very important to research the publishing industry. I've been published a couple of times. I've tried the self-publishing thing, and I know a lot of people want to be their own boss and make their own decisions, but it's very important to really weigh out your options because when you are your own publisher, you're also the writer and you're in charge of the printing, you're in charge of the finance, opposed to traditional publishing. The thing with traditional publishing is that a lot of times you have to find a publisher who best suits your needs. And for me, I was blessed to be taken on by Wahida Clark. Shout out to her. She published my first book as a second edition, Lust Now Cry Later, but it took me 11 years. I had a talent agent, a scout. Maxine Thompson, she passed away a couple of years ago, but she worked hard to get me a deal. And it's funny because I had three offers. The first offer was Zane. People love Zane, very well known melanated woman of color author. That didn't go through. And then I also got offered a deal with Carl Weber, and he got caught up because he has a series on Netflix called
Yeah,
Family Business. And then Wahida came, self publishing. It was something I enjoyed, but it cost a lot of money.
it
And
does.
not to deter anyone, but you have to make sure that you understand the ins and the outs. Just know that when you are with the publisher, you are giving a percentage to them, and then opposed to being a self publisher, everything is yours. Just know you're going to have to put that work in. One thing I want to recommend, please check out Dan Pointer's Self Publishing Guide. That book right there hits everything. It's very old, but the traditional and self publishing game has not changed. That's a
That's
must.
incredible. And we learned a lesson, which is the power of perseverance, patience.
Uh huh.
Everybody wants results overnight and it doesn't happen. Tahani waited 11 years to get that happening for her. So we always see the beautiful part of, being an entrepreneur, but sometimes people forget how difficult that journey is, and sometimes you can be so lonely in that journey.
Mm-hmm.
Is when we hear stories like yours now, we see the resilience that you had to go through, the courage that you had to pick up at the last drop of every moment to become what you are today. So it's not just about words, it's about the message behind them. What did you want people to feel when they read your work?
I want people to feel they have a friend. I
Mm,
want people to feel there's someone out there who understands and overstands. I remember when I did my book signing a couple of years ago, a young lady came to my table. She was 18 and she purchased my book. And about 10 minutes later, she came back and she was bawling, crying hysterically to the point where I had to leave my table. And I told my husband, I said, watch this. I just watch your table. Let me talk to her. I pulled her to the corner and I'm like, what's wrong? She's like, I read the first few pages. That's me. You're talking to me. And it just touched me so much. And so I said, you know what? Here's the money. Here's my number. call me. I'm here for you. And that's the type of impact I want to have. I want for people to feel as if they're not alone. I want to be that friend. I want to be that person they can come to, advice on the publishing world, advice on a literature world, but someone that they can talk to if they need some words of encouragement, some advice. I want to be that friend.
Love that. And your personal story is so impactful because your brand as a writer. How do you think somebody can use their experiences to build something so impactful?
I remember my dad always tells me whenever we're having conversation, he always bring up God. I'm like, Dad, this conversation is not about God. It's always about God. What do you mean? So now I see what Dad was saying. Building a relationship with a higher being is a must because if you don't have that connection, it's almost impossible to navigate through life.
Mm,
You have to be able to have that one-on-one conversation with the higher being because let's say we have a television, a flat screen, and it needs to be mounted to the wall. You go to the manual, right? What is your manual in life? For me, obviously, my manual is Islam. Whenever I have a problem that needs to be solved, I take it to my Quran. And my dad tells me, never let your Quran collect dust. Building that relationship with the higher being was the first step because let me tell you something. When you go through a loss, people will experience anger. And sometimes a person will be angry with themselves. Sometimes a person will be angry with the higher entity. I went through that. You have to learn how to accept it and move on and know that you can't change what the creator has planned. If it's decreed, it's going to be, period. Building that relationship and that bond and that link with the higher entity is a must. Because in order for you to understand yourself, you have to understand where you came from.
I love that. That was so impactful actually for me
Thank you.
personally. Thank you for sharing that. You know, our stories are the foundations of our power. And when we share them, when we talk like this, we invite others to rise from their own struggles. And that's exactly what you have done today. We've been talking so much about grief, and I know that grief never really goes away, it transforms.
Mhm.
How has your writing evolved over time? And how do you still find yourself writing from that place of loss?
I love that question because I didn't want to put myself in a box. I had at one point given the title relationship expert, relationship columnist. I don't want to stay in that box of being a relationship expert or relationship columnist. I am Tahanee. I'm an author. I write. I want to write about science fiction. I want to write about true crime. Once you realize what your passion is, and if you're good at it, it's okay to venture off. It's okay to write something that's funny. It's okay to write something that's mysterious. It's okay to write something that's science, sci-fi. When one puts themselves in a box, they really take away the possibility of growing and flourishing. If you want to write a piece that has nothing to do with relationships and more so to do with maybe true crime, go for it. You'll never know unless you step out there and allow for yourself to be. We're not meant to be here to stay stuck in one box. We're here with a purpose. Your purpose could be an author one day and the next day a motivational speaker.
Yeah,
Never limit yourself. That's my word of advice.
I love that because you know healing isn't linear and neither is creativity. It ebbs and flows with our emotions.
Mm-hmm.
What's the most important lesson you've learned through writing about your grief and how has it shaped you to approach your life?
The most important lesson I've learned, honestly, is to keep things to yourself. Because there were times before when I may have told someone an idea, and there are a lot of naysayers. That's why I said it's very important that when you're writing, you write from your heart. I gave people pieces to read after I felt 100% sure that no matter what they said, I was still keeping that piece. It was just going to stay in its original format. I may have taken some advice for them, but overall, the foundation of the story remained the same. Never look for others to confirm what you feel. Never allow for others to tell you what you should write about. And that's one of the most important things. Sometimes you have to be that way when it comes to your craft, when it comes to your gift, because when you're at such a premature, phase in writing, a person can become very deterred and discouraged, especially if they go to someone who they look up to for advice and they tell them something that could be very like just deterring, could just deter them. It's very important to understand what it is that you're writing, why you're writing, the purpose. who it is you're trying to reach, or, is it helping you emotionally? And I'm going to say it one more time. It's always a plus if you can connect with someone else through your own emotions.
I'm so grateful. You've shared such great personal experiences, and I hope people are listening and learning. How do you find the balance between vulnerability and privacy when sharing your story with the world?
I think it's about um I'm comfortable. I'm confident. And it took me a long time to get to this place, and I've lost a lot of people along the way. And I started to realize that a lot of the people who have passed away, they weren't able to reach their full potential. Every day I'm able to wake up and see the sun rise and see it set. I there's still a purpose for me. And when I'm writing and I'm on my business ventures, I think about the people who aren't here. And I say, I'm doing it for the people who were afraid to step out. I want to be that voice. And as eerie as it may sound, every single person I've lost so far, they've always tried to have their last moments with me. And I will never deny the fact that at some point in time, I felt a sense of guilt. I mean, whether it be I got into a petty argument with them and they try to contact me right before they passed away. I mean, even up to like the hour of their passing. I say to myself, you know what? It was a reason for this. It's a reason why I'm still here. I have to make it count. I have to make it work. And that's my motivation.
That's incredible, Tahani. That was such a wonderful story, and I feel vulnerability is a strength. When we share our truth, we give others permission to do the same. So I'm grateful that you're doing that and sharing your story with so much courage. And it requires courage to speak about your personal life in front of audience, but I've realized that I do also get strength from within when I do that for myself. While we are coming to the end of the podcast, firstly, thank you for being here.
Thank
And I
you.
love to wrap up the episode with something fun, which is a rapid fire segment, if you're ready for it.
I'm ready.
What's one thing that people don't know about grief until they experience it? Hmm.
Grief has no expiration date, and people have to go through their emotions. And you can't expect for everyone to be sympathetic to what it is that you're feeling. And one thing I can say is a person doesn't know what it feels like until it happens to them. I could watch the news and see someone has lost a loved one, and immediately it just touches my soul, touches my heart. But that's when you have empathy, and most importantly, when you have a connection with the creator.
So beautiful. What's your go to writing routine when you're feeling stuck?
Well, first, I'll always pray. I read my Quran and ask God to please guide me through this process right now. If it is something that I need to write about that's going to change someone's life, give me the words. And I have to tell you something. And I tell people this all the time. I promise you, when I'm writing, I'm not even tired. The words just come from a place where I have sometimes I go back and I read my things and I'm like, way before Chat GPT, I wrote this and I know it's a gift because it just comes like the rain that falls from the sky. That's how the words hit my paper.
Well, ChatGPT is there because of all the authors of the
Right?
world. People
Yeah,
have said that. Where is it getting all the information from?
right.
Where is it getting the language from?
I like Chat GPT, but it does definitely give authors, I don't want to say a
Yeah,
bad
it
name,
does take the creativity away.
but when it comes from the heart and it's original, people who are true writers and authors and people who are in sync with those emotions, they'll know this is
You
Chat
know,
GPT. Oh no, this is from, yeah. They'll know. Yeah.
I absolutely agree. And published authors like you are never going to fade away. People are still going to have the same love and respect as they always had. If you could give one piece of advice to your younger self, what would it be?
Keep on pushing. Do not let anything or anyone get in the way of your purpose. Keep your business to yourself. Don't tell everyone your every move, what you plan on writing, because not everyone's going to be supportive. Not everyone is your friend. Be very careful about who you share your work with, the publishers, the editors. the publicist, be very careful. Get yourself a really great lawyer and do your research. It could take a year, 2, 3 years. At least you know you have that knowledge, and no one can pull wool over your eyes.
So true. What's one book that has helped you through the toughest of times?
I'm going to say my Quran. But other than that, I'm going to be very honest with you. Going back and reading my own novel.
I love
Going
that.
back and
And if
reading my
you're
own
curious
novel.
about Tahanee's novel, all the details will be there in the
Yes,
podcast.
yes.
Last question. Writing or therapy? Which one saved you the most?
Writing, I would definitely. Yeah.
Tahani, thank you so much for your vulnerability and your wisdom today. Your journey from grief to empowerment through writing is something that will resonate with so many people. For everyone listening, remember grief is not the end of your story. It's just one little chapter. Use your pain. Use everything that you grieve about to create something beautiful, just like Tahani did for herself. If you've been touched by today's episode, don't forget to share it with more people. Subscribe, leave us a review, put some comments, and share this powerful conversation with anyone you think needs to hear. Until next time, keep writing your own story, one word at a time. Thank you, and see you later.